Welcome to the Word on Wednesday. This is your midweek online Bible study and devotion at Mackville Christian Church. Today's Wednesday, January 28th, 2026. And before diving into this week's Word on Wednesday, let me remind you that as I tape this session, that rough weather is still being forecast for the several more days. So if you need assistance with anything, don't hesitate to call on me or to call on someone at Mackville Christian Church. We're ready to help you. Feel free to message me here on Facebook, or you can call me. However you want to get in touch with us, don't hesitate to call on us if you need any assistance at all. Also, I want to look back at this past Sunday. It was one in which the very difficult decision was made to cancel our worship services. That's something that's never easy to do. This was the first time since I've been at Mackville, a little over 3 years, that we've done so in advance. We did have a very abbreviated service one time last year when snow started reaching right about the time we were to start. And so the decision was made to have a quick abbreviated service and utilize YouTube for the sermon that day. But I want to remind you that if we have bad winter weather being called for, I'll always tape the sermon in advance, and it will be available on YouTube during our regular worship hours, so that if you do not feel comfortable coming together, you will have that at your normal time. Now, I want to just continue our messages that we've been having here on Word on Wednesday. Since the start of 2026, I've been looking into Old Testament personalities. And today I continue looking into the life of Abraham, or Abram as he was called originally, and his nephew Lot. There are so many chapters in the story of Abraham that teach us even today. And in Genesis chapters 13 and 14, there's an account that shouts to us, avoid immorality. Now, if you've not already read those chapters, I encourage you to stop the tape and go and read them now and then pick up at where we left off. I find this story very intriguing. Since Abram and his family, along with Lot, his nephew, were traveling from Egypt back toward where Abram had built an altar to worship in Genesis chapter 12. But along the way, Abram realized that the land would not support everything that he owned and all that Lot owned. They were both apparently very rich at this time. Genesis chapter 13, verses 6 and 7 says, "For their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together. There was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land." Abram didn't want strife, so he told Lot that he didn't want that between them or their herdsmen because they were kin. Now, Abram could have exercised his seniority. He was the older person. He could have taken the first choice of the land. But he said, here, let's look at the land here. And Lot, whichever way you want to go, I'll go the other way. Genesis chapter 13, verse 10 tells us the Jordan Valley was well watered toward the land of Zoar. And verses 11 and 12 are very telling. So Lot chose for himself all the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. Thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan, while Lot settled among the cities in the valley, and moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now, from a pure business standpoint, this was probably a pretty good move, because the land that Lot picked was just more suited for supporting the flocks. But we all know what eventually happened to Sodom. God destroyed Sodom and its sister city Gomorrah because of their immorality. Whether Lot knew that Sodom was an immoral city when he picked to go that way, we don't really know. But it is very telling what Moses wrote in Genesis chapter 13 and verse 13. Now the men of Sodom were wicked, great sinners against the Lord. In chapter 14, we're told that Lot was captured as a prisoner of war. But Abram learned of this and took 318 of his own men and went to free Lot. But then we're told Lot went back to Sodom. We don't know why. Perhaps his family was well established there. It could have been many other reasons. I'm not going to delve into those conjectures because the Bible simply doesn't tell us. But there is a huge, huge lesson from here. And that's simply stay away from sin. We're told that Lot chose to settle near Sodom because of economic reasons, and I think many of us can relate to that. But after being in that area there for a while, he became involved in a war and became a prisoner. Then later, we know what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah. We already talked about that. And we know that when they were being destroyed, Lot's wife looked back and she was turned into a pillar of salt. My question to you is, have you ever made a decision largely on economic considerations? Maybe you have, maybe you haven't. I'm not going to criticize either way. There are times, I'm sure, that economic considerations outweigh everything else. And there are times when those reasons are well down the list of reasons. But rest assured that I can guarantee you, almost guarantee you, that if a decision is made without consideration of spiritual effects, chances are it's going to be a disaster. How seriously do we consider the spiritual ramifications when we have a new undertaking, maybe a new job, new duties on our job, a new business endeavor, even something we do for fun? Do we consider what that can do to us both spiritually and physically? Folks, it's something we should consider. We've got to be honest with ourselves. Be honest with how things are going to affect us. I think about my own life, and I won't go into all these details. One thing that's pretty straightforward is I think everybody knows how I like to listen to music, but I'm very careful about that, about what I purchase and concerts I attend, because I don't want there to be a compromise of my witness or anything like that. I don't want to support anything that could be against God's will. But that's something that's very simple. That's not hard to make that decision. That's easy. But what about a situation like Lot? What about economic realities? Those are more difficult because we have to support ourselves and our families. But what if we are called upon to compromise our faith and our jobs? Maybe lying. Maybe something even more blatant. Some people go into porn or something along that line. Some people get involved in alcohol abuse through their work. It happens more than we like to admit. It could even be a situation where you are considered to blaspheme the word or to discredit the word. Do you take those things into consideration? You know, I realize there are people who have ministries to the most vulnerable, those who are trying to escape addictions, those who are trying to help those people get out of sexual sins and sexual business and perversion. If those apply to you, just know your strengths. Know your strengths if you're ministering to someone. And be sure you get that adequate support so you won't fall into Satan's trap. See, Jesus went directly to sinners. It calls upon us to do so as well. But Proverbs chapter 4 also says, to above all else guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. You see, I think this message from the life of Abram is pretty straightforward. Abram trusted in God's promises. He said, through you, all nations of the world will be blessed. But the lesson of Lot is also very straightforward. Avoid sin at all costs. I pray you'll do that. Folks, I love you very much, and I'll see you Sunday at Macville. Sunday school at 9:30, worship at 10:30. We'll see you then, and take care.